Hello, and welcome to Leveraging Thought Leadership. I'm your host, Bill Sherman, and today we talk about one of my passions, organizational thought leadership. That is, the people who create, curate, and deploy thought leadership on the behalf of their organization. My guest today is Surya Kalluri, the managing director at Bank of America. He leads thought leadership efforts for the retirement and personal wealth business services. He comes to thought leadership with a deep strategy background. 14 years as a strategy management consultant at Bain and A.T. Kearney. Then at Bank of America, he was head of strategy and also ran a business unit. Welcome, Surya.
Bill, thank you very much. Terrific opportunity, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So we're often focused on the pipeline for sales for the month or the quarter, and different business units have different time horizons, right? And so marketing sales are the most short term often. And then, like you said, strategy of 3 to 5 years, and you're even further out looking and asking that question. But I know you play an interesting role within Bank of America in terms of working with frontline sales and marketing. So how do you use some of the work from looking around the corner in the future to inform what's going on today?
Yeah, Bill, that's a great question. So let me give you a tangible example.
Please.
Well, one of the focus areas that we have at Bank of America is to help clients live richer, better financial lives. We are a bank and we would think about it that way. And we've identified life stages that we go through and looked at financial opportunities and challenges people have as they go through their life stages. So you can imagine if we are focused on this aging megatrend, then if you can break that aging, that 100-year life into life stages, people can think about now how to navigate those. So that's an example of how what's a megatrend that you have a long horizon on is broken down into how our advisors and our product development colleagues can think about helping along those life stages.
So can you give an example of how those life cycles come to be and what sort of impact are they creating?
Yeah, so think about it this way. One of the big topics that folks have to think about is, for example, the topic of caregiving. So particularly in today's time and age, when we are all isolated, you can imagine elders in the family are even more so isolated, with family members not being able to visit them and help them. So caregiving is a high priority. And so a lot of our research is focused on how can we help our advisors, help our clients provide information and resources such that caregiving can be properly done. Not only are we doing that for our clients, but the bank is also doing it for our own associates. So caregiving, so you would not imagine caregiving suddenly being a topic of importance within a financial services organization, but here it is, thanks to our ability to think about what are the needs clients have, and one of them being caregiving.
So let me push this a little bit further. So if I'm a financial advisor, I may be used to saying, okay, here's a topic. I've got a meeting with a client coming up. I look in a set of file folders and I pull something, whether it's a one pager on a topic or a document that just helps me prepare for that conversation. But that material could be content marketing in some ways, right? How do you help the financial advisor elevate the conversation and really create a meaningful experience between the financial advisor and the client? Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, one of the things we have done is created training for our advisors on the topic of gerontology. So imagine that, we're not a pharmaceutical or a health care oriented organization. We are a financial services organization, yet in partnership with the University of Southern California, Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, have created a gerontology certificate that advisors could take and go through 8 modules, take some tests, and come back out of it with a gerontology certificate, which gives them a lot of confidence to have a very different conversation with clients.
So give me an example of how the thought leadership team supports financial advisors, right? What can you do that downloading, say, a content marketing piece can't do, for example?
So terrific question, Bill. So I'll give you an example. In addition to the training, we also do events for clients with advisors. So I remember an occasion in the Midwest where we did an event on the topic of cognitive decline in Alzheimer's, which is a rather specific topic. And we did that in partnership. We have a financial gerontologist on my team. So we had the financial gerontologist, myself, and a corporation that is very involved in this Alzheimer's area. And so together we did a panel, and the advisor had their practice and their clients and their families attend this event. And you can imagine the topic of Alzheimer's being discussed with a Bank of America Merrill Lynch brand. And at the end of it, we got a lot of feedback from clients who said, hey, thank you for putting this topic on the table that we were reluctant to discuss within the family. But now the topic is on the table, and we can discuss much more openly how we structure the communication and finances within the family to attend to this issue. So that's a specific example of how, and many other topics we take to clients include things like I said before, caregiving or social security and other topics.
I think that's a great example in that emotional connection that thought leadership can create, where you can be relevant on a much deeper level and create, in some cases, deep loyalty, where you created the opportunity for a family to have a conversation that they were struggling to have on their own, right? And
Indeed.
Opening that door.
Indeed. So one of the life stages, I was talking about life stages with you before, and one of the life stages is around widowhood. You can imagine, if we're talking about emotion and complexity, that is really emotional and a complex situation. And I was not sure how that study would be received. But I can tell you, once we launched it and the feedback we've received is, to your point, very emotionally resonant, which opens the door to have broader, deeper conversations and build that relationship with the client.
It moves from transactional to relational in a true and meaningful way when you're standing behind someone at a truly difficult point in their life, right?
Exactly. And throughout our life journey, there are such life events: birth of a child, purchase of a home, retirement, right? And each of those points, you should be able to make an emotional connection with the client.
Recently, I've been reflecting on the concept of convening authority. Thought leadership can raise a concept's visibility, attract people to join a conversation, and spur them to take action together to tackle a big challenge. So, I've asked Nora Super to join us for this discussion on convening authority because it's a topic she understands deeply. Nora has served in a variety of leadership roles, both in the public and private sector. In 2014, she was appointed by the president as the executive director of the White House Conference on Aging. Currently, Nora is the senior director of the Milken Institute Center for the Future of Aging and the executive director of the Milken Institute Alliance to Improve Dementia Care. She oversees data-driven research, meaningful policy initiatives, and impactful convenings, both in the United States as well as internationally. The Alliance is relatively new, launched only a few months ago in the summer of 2020. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the story of how she encouraged people and organizations to say, we're in to improve dementia care. Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Nora.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You've used a phrase which I think is very powerful and that I want to explore today, which is the concept of convening authority. There are big questions and big issues that are out in the world that no one individual or one organization can tackle. And it's worthy of time or attention, but they often slip through the cracks. And I'd like to focus there for a moment. Let's talk about the work that you've done from convening authority, both with the White House and now with the Milken Institute. How does convening authority help thought leadership, and what do you need to make convening authority happen?
Well, that's a great question, Bill, and something that I really think about a lot through early stages of my career when I worked at George Washington University, and we convened people from government to come up with ways to move forward. I was also a lobbyist at ARP during health reform, and really saw the need to get the right people in the room in order to make action happen. And as you mentioned, I had the privilege and honor of serving as the executive director of the White House Conference on Aging under President Obama. And when you're in the White House, it's a totally different sizzle factor, right? If you call someone and say, we want you to be and make a presentation, and the President of the United States will be there, well, people listen and pay attention. And one of the things President Obama did that was very effective is if we gave folks an audience at the White House, and for example, corporate CEOs or researchers or advocates, we said, what are you going to commit to do? What are you going to try to say that will be a change that you can make? And so it was really challenging the folks that wanted to present information to us to also make a commitment themselves. And I saw that as a really powerful way to get people to think about, well, what could I do? I'm not going to just go asking for something, but there are things that I could do. And we had culminated at the White House Conference on Aging event with almost 80 new public-private sector initiatives that we announced that day, and just saw this powerful ability of bringing people together from all over government. The White House, of course, has the ability to convene all different parts of government. So we had people from Treasury and Department of Labor and Department of Justice, not that you would always think of as folks working on aging, but they really are. They're all part of the solution, as well as corporations, many of whom, provide retirement security to their employees. And we had several large corporations like Alaska Airlines and Clorox step up and say, hey, we're going to automate how we enroll people in their retirement plans. We're going to give a better matching for that. And they stepped up to the plate to really provide better retirement security to their employees that is measurable and something we can see impact. We did that just across so many different spectrums. So the ability of being able to convene people at that level, which of course, when you're talking about the White House, you have people at the CEO level, but of course, all these folks have different people underneath them that work to help implement it, and bringing them all on board and getting exciting about what we can accomplish together. And, then when I joined the Milken Institute is really just known for putting together some of the world's most influential convenings. We put on a global conference, generally that's about 5,000 people from 400 countries in LA. Of course, this year we need to do it virtually, but we still have that power to convene from all over industry, from the finance world to healthcare world, down to food service providers, you name it, we've got them there. Some of the world's government leaders, et cetera. So really bringing people into the room, being able to say, hey, this is the issue. Here's some ideas we've come up with. What do you think? And it's just amazing when you can get a group of really smart, dedicated people all together to think about a problem, how many great solutions that people can come up with. And also just the point of not the same people talking to each other. I feel like, I'm based in Washington, D.C., and there's a bit of an echo chamber sometime on some issues where people are really just preaching to the choir. And to advance change, I think it's really important to bring new people into the room that give you new ideas, new insights, but also so that you are getting better at making your arguments or seeing what works with different types of people to really spread your message further.
If you are enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about the podcast, please leave a 5-star review and share it with your friends. We are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all major platforms, as well as at leveragingthoughtleadership.com. Thought leadership often requires a delicate balance. How do you tell leaders not only what they want to know, but also what they need to know? To explore that question with me today, I invited Luke Collins. Luke is the global editor-in-chief and managing director at EY. He's responsible for global thought leadership at EY, which is a strategic role that requires a deep understanding of both EY's internal experts within the organization and the global leaders they're trying to reach through thought leadership. Luke's been in thought leadership roles for many years. Prior to joining EY, he served as the managing director and director of publishing at Deloitte Insights and the executive editor of McKinsey Publishing. So, welcome to the show, Luke.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, I want to ask a question about modalities and shifts possibly in modalities. So, the classic big consulting house thought leadership was the magazine, the white paper, the research report. But now we have a ton of short form modalities, whether it's a LinkedIn post, a tweet, etc. How has EY responded and adapted to the consumption of content? Because reaching audiences is important, and people are not reading as much long form anymore. They still do, but not as much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a work in progress for everyone, not just us. I think the general consensus is you want people to read the right content in the right place at the right time, wherever they happen to want it, and in whatever format they want it. So we are pushing hard on format innovation, and not for the sake of just being different, but to try and figure out exactly, if you are an individual sitting in a particular role, let's say you're a CFO, and within the marketing funnel, so to speak, you're at the awareness phase or the consideration phase, where it happens to be, how are we specifically speaking to you as an individual at that point in your thought process, and are we delivering the content that is necessary to help push you to the next step? And in some ways, as an old journalist, that is kind of a very kind of technical, almost a little bit sort of harsh isn't the right word, but it's a very rigid way of approaching thought leadership, because we tend to think of thought leadership more as people are doing work out in the field. They worked with a number of clients on a particular issue. They come back with really interesting insights around how they manage to help these organizations improve. And there you write the thought leadership, and it helps people. And it's a lot less direct and precise than it might be in a traditional content marketing world. Like, that's where I get to the point about the sort of the worlds merging a little bit and finding that balance between delivering content that is still reflective of what the users are demanding, what potential clients want, and ensuring that it balances and matches up with what our needs are as an organization. I struggle sometimes personally with the idea that I don't like trying to tell users that they should find something interesting and important because we find it interesting and important, because ultimately we work for them. At the same time, this gets back to what you need to know and what you want to know. Their needs in the immediate term, or what they want an answer to today, we should be responding to, but we also have a perspective around what we think they should know about and be responding to over a medium to longer term, or even a short term, they just haven't noticed it yet. So there's definitely that balancing act, and the format innovation is critical, because I think in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily around inventing new content or commissioning content or creating new content. In some ways, it's just being more responsive in terms of taking your existing content and busting it up or atomizing it, whatever you want to describe it, into just more bite-sized chunks across different formats and different channels.
And then if someone sees one of those snackable bites and says, "Oh, that's interesting," then you can leave breadcrumbs to point them back to the larger form materials.
Sure, and I'm shameless. I sort of say I am completely format and platform agnostic. I just want people to see the content. Yeah. I just want people to see it. I want them to get some value out of it, irrespective of how little or how much time they spend with it. I want them to get something from it. If that results in them coming back and saying, really want to work with you guys and I want to spend a truckload of money, that's fantastic. If it results in them getting a useful nugget that helps them solve a particular problem, or even think about something differently just in the moment, I'll take that as well, But I think you're right. We're driven by the market. People don't necessarily want to sit down and read a 20-minute, 4,000-word think piece, when what they really want is, give me 3, we all sort of fall into the, glossy magazine approach. Give me three things I can use to solve this, to think about this particular issue today.
Well, and there's a tension between the listicle of the
Yeah.
here's 3 quick takeaways you can do versus a think piece, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
a lot of people who are deep subject matter experts want to write the long form, but there's the challenge of how do you take those insights and package it in a way that the reader is actually going to consume? Because it doesn't matter if it's the most brilliant research report ever if nobody's touching it. Right.
I agree, and you face that constant battle with, particularly with senior, extremely smart, successful senior people who say, "I don't want you dumbing me down." So this isn't dumbing you down. This is
because
making
it's
your
they
content
perceive it as
accessible.
their brand, right, and their reputation. Yeah,
we're making your content accessible. We are. I mean, I always say, I want to make you look smart. I want you to look brilliant, but as you say, there's no point being a genius sitting in the basement and no one ever sees your work or reads your work or understands what you're saying. And I think that's where some of the journalistic sensibilities come in as well. I think we've moved toward pretty heavily trying to eliminate the more academic style of thought leadership in favor of a more news-oriented or inverted pyramid style like you might find in a newsroom. It makes the assumption
don't bury the lead.
Yeah, it make work on the assumption that the 3 most important elements, and I say facetiously, spend more time on this than the rest of the article: the title, the deck, or the blurb, or the teaser text, whatever you want to describe it, and the intro. I'm like, that 20 seconds is the most critical. That is nothing more important than those 20 seconds. You lose someone at that point, you're not going to get them back. And so front load it with what's the news point of this? Think about it, how a journalist would receive a press release and go, what am I going to write on this? Front load the insights. And then you can absolutely go into chapter and verse about the history and client examples and all of the stuff that really brings it to life and adds color and depth and really shows and fully demonstrates your expertise and your intelligence. But if you don't get them at the beginning, all of that's just irrelevant.
Thought leadership, especially in the current environment over the last few years, and I think going forward, has to be punchy. You can't write the long expository text that goes almost in a Socratic method that the big ahas at the end. Nobody's going to get there.
No, and particularly not going to get there when, let's be honest, there is so much thought leadership. It's commoditized to the point of almost irrelevance. And so I think we are certainly focusing on editorial strategy is built around quality over quantity. We really want to be more rigorous and ruthless about what we decide to publish on, and that's not an issue of resources on our side. That's an issue of sort of consideration for the end user. That's if we have. I saw whether it was correct or not, I'm not sure. I think a HBR piece a while back talking about the percentage of time in the average executive's day when they actually have the capacity to think about thought leadership or to read thought leadership. And it was minuscule. And so you begin thinking, all right, how do you grab someone who has potentially 3 minutes in a day? How do you grab their attention? How do you cut through the noise and try and become part of the conversation for them, or begin having them think differently about what your firm offers as a thought partner or as a thought leader? And yeah, you're right. I mean, you can't have the, here's 1,000 words of background on this topic, and here's 2,000 words with our, explaining the methodology behind how we did this, and here's another 1,000 words on something else, and finally at the 5,000 word mark, we'll get to something insightful. You can't do that. And I'm not sure you should ever have done that, but I think you had the ability maybe to do that previously, but you certainly don't anymore.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please join our LinkedIn group, Organizational Thought Leadership. It's a professional community where thought leadership practitioners talk shop about our field. So if you're someone who creates, curates, or deploys thought leadership for your organization, then please join the conversation in the Organizational Thought Leadership LinkedIn